Okay, we'll take off. I'm Brian Caldwell. I'm chair of the NCLUG, and I'd like to welcome everybody this morning. This is a special week for NCLUG. We're doing a special presentation for NCDOT OpenX Rollout Week. OpenX refers to most all the Bentley Connect Edition brands. That's kind of a term they're throwing around right now. NCLUG is really proud to partner with the Department of Transportation to bring an overview and all the department unit updates this week. So it's going to be a fantastic week. We're really looking forward to it. This morning's session is going to be an overview, basically a status update of where NCDOT ORD is right now. And then the rest of the week is going to be each department's going to expand on that and give a more in-depth overview of where they're at with ORD implementation. But most people have attended most of our seminars, but I'm still going to go over our housekeeping details just in case there's some folks out there that's joining us for the first time. This is a webinar. This webinar is a presentation, so all attendees will be muted. But anytime during the webinar, you can submit your question in the chat box. And we also will host, we'll fill the questions to the presenter, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So just, if you're wanting a question answered, just wait to the end and we'll get them out there. Or sometimes we'll answer them in the chat box. This webinar is being recorded, and we will share the link after the event. Let's see, we are offering PDHs for this, for most of all the webinars this week. So be sure to sign up for the ones that you want, or if you need PDHs. But you, after the sessions, NCLUG will also send out PDH receipts, but you must attend the live meeting. No credit will be given those who go back and watch the recorded ones. So for anyone who hasn't attended one of these before, that's pretty important to know. You need to attend the live meetings. So that's most of our housekeeping items. So now I'd like to introduce Jeff Garland. He is an NCDOT ORD Implementation Manager, and he's going to give the presentation this morning. And I will turn it over to Jeff and let him get started. Thank you, Jeff.
Great. Well, thank you, Brian, and good morning, everyone. I'm assuming my volume's okay, Brian, and you can see the screen?
Volume's fine. I can see the screen.
Excellent. Well, we'll just get right underway here. Have an hour to present. Certainly want to leave some time at the end for some questions, input. As Brian noted, my name is Jeff Garland. I'm excited to be with the NCDOT for this big change. This is quite a shift for the department, and I'll go through some more about that in a minute. I do want to give a kind of a quick background, talk through what the initiative it is, why we're doing it, what some of the anticipated benefits are, why we're taking this opportunity to make this change. Looking to do a team approach, looking to see how we do all the change management we're looking to do as a department, because this does touch all units, all divisions, all disciplines across the state. And so it's quite the undertaking. I do want to, then I'll kind of go over a quick overview of this week's OpenX sessions. And again, as Brian noted, Bentley, which is our software provider, they have a new branding thing around Open Roads, Open Bridge. Again, it's the open in front of it, so we just call it the OpenX sessions to cover a bunch of those. I will talk about the plan moving forward, what this next state fiscal year looks like for this 2021-2022 state fiscal year, and then talk about some of those technical implications that we're dealing with as we go. So I'll just jump right in from there. Looking to have a little fun with this thing too, and I know everyone kind of knows this, but I love this slide. I thought I'd talk to it for just a moment. We are really at the beginning of all the computer-aided design and drafting world. I mean, really, if you think about it, the first digital computer didn't even exist until the 40s. I mean, if you think about the evolution of mankind, where we're at, we are still at the very beginning of understanding what computers can do for all sorts of things in the world and the industry, and certainly in civil design. It really wasn't even until the 80s that people had personal computers. So we're just 40 years into this, which is mind-blowing if you think of the pace and what we've done in the last 40 years with personal computers. And then it wasn't too shortly after that in the 90s that NCDOT really began to transition from hand-drawn engineering work. We're only 30 years in from where we were hand drawing all of our engineering designs. So the pace is pretty phenomenal if you think about it. I know when we get entrenched in the work and the day-to-day environment, we don't think about it, but we are really on a very fast-paced change and evolution of how we're doing things as a humankind and certainly as designers. And then so it's been a pretty steady 20 years of really understanding two-dimensional design, really taking that evolution from hand drawing to computer aided design. And I really foresee the 2020s that we're in to really be that next big transition to truly try to use the evolution of three-dimensional design. And at the bottom there, I just put a lot of the years of kind of Bentley, how they've gone through their different pieces, but really this next step around OpenRose Designer, the Connect Edition, that's where we're really hoping to get off and running with a lot of our design work. So with that said, a quick background, NCDOT has been using Bentley as our provider of software for a long time, certainly for the last 30 years or so. But Bentley is making that move to discontinue some of their legacy software, and that includes SS2, SS4, the kind of the MicroStation V8i world, and moving towards that Connect open platform. So as such, we as the department are following in suit, and we're trying to figure out the best ways to adopt the software and really reap the benefits. So that's what we're focused on. The initiative we're doing for the department is really to take that CAD operations to ORD, because it really is that multidisciplinary 3D application that we're hoping to deliver our transportation projects. And as I noted, this really is a major transition and a paradigm shift for the department in a number of ways. And what really makes ORD that paradigm shift is that, like I mentioned, it's that evolution. But really it's because we start turning towards a 3D model centric world. Whereas I know historically we do our two-dimensional designs, as everyone knows. We generate those plan, profile, cross-section sheets. And then as an incidental, we do generate models, and we have in the past, but really making sure that those two align all the time has been a challenge. And there's some manual pieces there that we're trying to move forward and really find some efficiencies in. So with ORD and all the testing and piloting and all the work that we're doing currently, we really see the change being that paradigm shift of now we're generating the model from our work with both our 2D and 3D design workflows. And really the sheets, the plan, profile, cross-section sheets, they're more of the incidental at the end. But then the plan is that these two will align very succinctly, so there won't be so many discrepancies. Because if you think about the design intelligence is stored in the graphical elements on how we pull it together. And as everyone knows in the industry, with GPK kind of going away for how it is, it really eliminates the need for that in some ways because it's all tied in with those graphical elements. So just again, that's part of the reason why it's a paradigm shift. In looking at this, I got a little video playing on the side, and certainly working closely with a lot of folks that have helped me with these graphics, etc. But if you think about back to the OpenX platform, that includes ORD, OpenBridge, OpenRail. There's the drainage utilities component within it. But if you think about it, it's really trying to integrate those multiple disciplines, the modules for all those multiple design disciplines that can be tied into a single model. And rather than the disciplines generating their own separate set of plans, it really ties us all together. And so in this video that's running, you basically see a model produced by ORD where you've got OpenBridge Modeler, Ghent, you have it all kind of tied in, and you notice you see they're kind of checking for any bridge bent locations that are conflicting with the road design. So again, we have a lot of optimistic views on how this can really be used, and the technology's there, which is amazing. So DOT's been on this road for a while, as we all know. I think people have been hearing the term ORD for several years now. The department truly became aware of it really around 2016, started kind of going through the understandings, some of our initial workspaces. Certainly Oak that works with us has generated some of those as far back as 2016. And then a lot of the planning, testing, how are we going to do this thing over several years. But really it's been the last year or so, really since about the fall of 2019 or the summer of 2019, we truly started testing and piloting a lot of work within it. And this last year in 2021, even with the pandemic and everyone with the change of the world and working remotely a lot, we made a lot of strides as far as each of the disciplines and units really taking the opportunity to self-train, self-learn, get in. We didn't have a lot of budget, didn't have a lot of ability to do a lot of things, but we spent a lot of that time really diving into the software, diving into testing and how our workflows may or may not change in using the software. So it's really we made the most of it, is what I'm getting at. But what I really foresee is this kind of the bend in the road here, this 2021, 2022, this next state fiscal year is truly an implementation year. We've got a lot of true pilot projects underway where we're using ORD to generate the plans, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But really at this point, it is focused on replicating in a two-dimensional type world with our PDF, black and white type plan profile cross-section sheets to be able to do that using ORD rather than our V8i, SS2, SS4 software. That's the start. Certainly the models there, the three-dimensional pieces are there, but as far as any kind of anticipated model delivery, maybe 2023. There's so many things in the industry. We're working with AGC and others to try to understand what that may look like in other states. But the first step is to really transition into ORD first on how we can do that. So that's where we're at. And I know I keep talking about the software, but really in the big picture of things, that is just one piece of the puzzle. The fact that the world is where it is at as far as hardware, being able to run this and this memory intensive type work, the fact that there are standards and regulations, workflows, business practices out there around three-dimensional work, that's all come a long ways in the last 5 to 10 years. The fact that there is equipment in the field that can receive this as far as AMG and other type construction equipment, and really the politics is more open to three-dimensional work where everything else. So it's really all the pieces are coming together where it really is that time for an evolution to three-dimensional design. So we're very excited to be a part of that with the NCDOT, and it is a collaborative work with the industry out there as far as our private engineering firms and our partners out in the industry. So thank you. We see lots of benefits. This is why we're doing it. Obviously, the software is going to where it's at. And just to kind of walk through a few of our kind of key stakeholders, which I kind of break into the consultant side, the designers, whether it's NCDOT or our private engineering firms, the contractors and the construction industry, because they're reaping benefits from it, the DOT agencies, the true decision makers, and ultimately it's really the citizens in a lot of ways that are really going to benefit from this. But if you look at the highlighted first one here, the consultant designers, it really is going to help us analyze corridors using that immersive corridor modeling capabilities. And you can really get to that point where you can design in context rather than trying to look at a bunch of two-dimensional flat plans, but really to see it and really use that context to understand what you're designing. I think the human brain thinks more in three-dimensional anyway. I think as engineers, we've trained ourselves to look at the different views to try to piece it together in our heads. But really, once we start truly designing in three-dimensional modeling aspects, I think it becomes a lot easier and a lot more natural as far as that human experience. Again, model and analyze terrains, all that intelligent model work within those models is going to be very beneficial. And really from the contractor side, like I mentioned, their automated machine guidance equipment, if we can really get to that single source of the truth of that model and really have that flow into their construction work, that's going to do a number of things around efficiency, quality, safety, and really at the end of the day, hoping to reduce our schedule, cost, all sorts of things. So again, lots of hope on that side as well. If you look at from an agency side, if you're the DOTs or some of the agencies out there, the ability to really rapidly generate these layouts with the associated project cost to make decisions brings a lot of things to the table. So you can certainly figure out things from there. And we are trying to really get to the next level as far as utilizing digital twin technology to even improve our asset management functions down the line. But it really has lots of implications once you get into this better information management type systems. From the citizen side, really it's all about being able to see and understand projects prior to construction. The majority of our citizens are not engineers, they're not designers. For them to comprehend what is being proposed in their environments, the traditional flat plans can be okay, but sometimes that's hard for them to decipher and understand. If we get to a point where we can actually put out there augmented reality, different virtual reality type things, where in a world where we have this model available, maybe you can download it from the website. Maybe you go to the NCDOT website, and on this project construction site, you can use it on your phone or have some VR goggles, and you could maybe even go out to the site and then augmented reality kind of see where it's going to be and how it would work. But I foresee that technology getting to that point, and it's here. It's just how we move forward with it. So I think the ability for our citizens to really understand the impacts of what we're doing as an agency in the department, I think there's unlimited capacity there. But really, at the end of the day, if you look at the big benefit, I think, for citizens and DOTs and agencies, this graph's a little busy, but if you the general core of it is, the more we can catch up front in the concept, scoping, the preliminary design, the earlier on the design phase, that's where we really have the most benefit to influence our costs. Once you're out there in execution, you're done with design, and you're really out there building it, and much less an operation, you hit a fiber optic line, you have to make a change in a bridge abutment, you have to do changes there. That has all sorts of impacts on cost back, more costly, more time, inefficiencies. Your project schedule is going to get heavily affected. So really around clash detection, around understanding the design and the context of what you're doing, the more we can catch at the beginning, the better it is for everyone, certainly for taxpayer dollars. So that's what we're trying to focus on. And I mentioned better information management and BIM as far as some of the industry drivers. We really are trying to really maintain our data. Like I said, this graph, I like it because it basically shows from kind of planning through operation and maintenance. In our typical processes, we end up losing data at different phases after we've designed it, after we've procured, after we've built it, to really maintain all the information from those projects, the designs, from asset management. If we can capture those and keep those in a really truly three-dimensional context using ORD and other software systems, and really have that better information management system, that too will increase our efficiencies and our ability to rework, do things, go back, maintenance on the back end, understanding where our inventory is. There's lots of implications. So that was kind of my big background, but really we have a great team approach here at the department. I'm just going to kind of jump into basically thanking a number of players here. NCDOT leadership formed the position that I took, and I started that in January of last year. So it's been a year and a half of a lot of culmination of working with ORD working groups across the state. But really that drills down into the actual users, the CAD coordinators. Our working group is really busy at this point doing a number of things to try and figure this out, because this is a huge change for the department. I basically lean on those ORD working group roles to really do the bulk of all the coordination communication in each of the 14 divisions and each of the design units and disciplines, to really disseminate that technical information, collect feedback, discuss a lot of challenges and barriers, and really track the progress of what they're doing. And that's where I'm so excited for today, and this week especially, is for a lot of our disciplines and units to be able to present on where they're at, what it means to their specific design disciplines. Certainly I couldn't cover all the folks in the department in this 1 week, but I do want to point out that a lot of the folks on the front end of our design work, namely photogrammetry, location surveys, others, they've done a tremendous push in the last several months to get ready for new projects starting this summer, to be able to use ORD for our base mapping to really kind of get us out of the gate. And I'll talk more about that too, but I really do want to thank a number of the units and groups that have been working very diligently on this. So Bentley's been a big player with us, obviously. We've tried to work with them as closely as possible, and to Bentley's credit, over the last year and a half, I think they have squarely been at the table with us, and we're working through this collectively. To say it very clearly for now, we are still on the 10.09 version of ORD, which was the 2020 R3 release that came out last summer/fall. I do know that obviously 10.10 is out there, the new 2021 R1 release, but that just came out. We are going to very deliberately test it, figure it out, and see when and how we may use that as a department. But for our current work and our current pilot projects and our current testing, it's all around the 10.09, that 2020 R3 release for the time being. And as I mentioned, obviously in the OpenX platform, which we'll be talking about this week, we're working with Bentley to understand a lot of other products. We're at different phases for each one, whether that's the Open Bridge Designer, the OBM, the Modeler, Open Rail. There's talks about potential use of Open Ground, which is a newer product that Bentley has. Obviously, looking at all the other ones, and we're trying to look at Synchro and some of the back end products as well, as more towards the construction industry side. And then this bottom note here, I do want to point out that we have taken upon that team approach that DOT is utilizing 2 embeds from Bentley to really help us through this process. One who's our ORD expert and one who's a ProjectWise expert. And actually those 2 folks will be part of the presentation at noon today with the CAD services. So more on that to come. So that's a good intro into what are all the sessions this week. And so really in talking through those, excited for a number of reasons. One, it really gives the opportunity to give an update on where they're at. In no way are any of our units and disciplines 100% ready. It is an ongoing practice. We're finding workflow situations where we need to tweak things, but we are going to make it work. We are learning from it. We're looking for input back from the industry. We're trying to fine tune how we're preparing our guidelines, our training. And again, each of the units will talk about that during their specified sessions. But to give just a quick rundown for the week, if you haven't already signed up for some of these, at noon today with CAD services, we'll have those 2 Bentley embeds that I mentioned, Ethan Schwartz, who is our ORD expert, and Elizabeth Lee, who's our Bentley ProjectWise expert, along with members of our NCDOT CAD services team. Will certainly present where we're at on a number of topics around workspaces, ProjectWise, how we're rolling out certain pieces of the technology that is obviously critical for how we're going to run the OpenX platforms. And then at 3 o'clock this afternoon, Jason Moore is going to certainly help lead a discussion around from the roadway design perspective where we're at. And obviously there's lots of strides being made there, but we're probably going to focus mostly on the training options that are coming out and some of our understanding of how to work within ORD for a lot of the roadway design aspects of civil construction. Then tomorrow we'll roll into structures. First thing at 9 in the morning, Nick will be presenting, Nick Pierce, really where they're at with Open Bridge Designer, Open Bridge Modeler, some of the work they've been doing. And then at noon, we'll look at the geotechnical side of things and really how Ghent is playing into this, how we're looking to use ORD for our current geotech design work, and what some of the challenges are that they've been addressing and where they look to head with ORD. And then at 3 o'clock tomorrow, then we'll go through the Open Rail Designer piece, and Brian Gackstetter will be presenting on that and really kind of talk through how we intend to figure out the use of doing rail design as part of a road design project and using Open Roads Designer, and where Open Rail may be also beneficial to actually use that specific piece of the software in the OpenX platform. On Wednesday, we'll roll into kind of a combined session at 9 in the morning, talk about our hydraulics unit, erosion control, and utilities unit. And really the focus on that is obviously around the drainage and utilities component within ORD. And Bentley's very aware of this as well, but on a national perspective, they're working on a number of fronts around continuing to develop that drainage and utility component. And that's one of our focused areas, if you will, on how the department's preparing to move forward. We do have some things to figure out as far as how our department has historically done hydraulic design, how that ties in with the drainage and utility component, and the differences in moving forward with that without Geopack and how we're doing things. So there are some changes there for sure, but they'll talk more about that in Wednesday's session. And then at noon on Wednesday, we've got Emery Kincaid certainly talking about the location survey side of things. I know we just had the survey week recently with NCLUG, but be talking a little bit more about some of those details around how our location surveys unit is really trying to utilize ORD and the new open platform around that to really generate our base mapping and how we're looking to get our location surveys components within those type base mapping pieces so our design work can get done. And then to wrap up the day on Wednesday, we'll go into EAU, our environmental analysis unit. David Johnson will talk about some of how they intend to use ORD, some of the pieces within it, and some of the current work they're doing around different levels, lots of different pieces there, but I'll leave it at that. And that rolls us into the Thursday. And at that point, like I said, we're going to spend Thursday talking about traffic control, signing, signals over the 3 session. And a big thanks to Justin and Walter and Nick for stepping in to do those. Really trying to figure that out. Like I said, where does it make sense to do 3-dimensional modeling work versus just your traditional 2D design pieces? What needs to be in the model? What doesn't? How does that really impact traffic control? What are the implications around signing and signals, and how are we starting to test out and use those? So that's a lot of what that focus is. And then on Friday to wrap up, we'll be looking at the division perspective. We have Michael Trotter from one of our divisions stepping in. He's one of the designers that's been using ORD, been testing it out, been really trying to start pilot a few things with it. So he's got some insight into how to do some kind of rapid design work, all the different disciplines tied up in a division type smaller project and what that looks like. And then on noon on Friday, after the long week, we'll do a wrap-up session at noon and looking to address any kind of final questions or thoughts from the week. So as you attend these sessions, if you don't get a chance to come up with questions or talk with the folks while they're presenting, we do want to have an opportunity at the end to try to address as many questions as we can. And I will say this very clearly for the week as well. All the sessions, we're looking to be a very open, back and forth type discussion, because we do want to leave room for Q&A for each of the sessions, because we are trying to hear back from the industry. We're curious where certain private engineering firms are. Where is your progress as far as learning ORD? What have you heard? Are there different workarounds or different tactics you're learning as far as workflow and how to utilize the software best? So we'll be talking more about that as well. But I do want to stress that we are looking for an open conversation, and we'll talk more about that at the end. So moving forward. So again, lots of things happening, but really this summer, I'm calling it a phase 1. I mean, it could be phase 400 as far as that goes. I don't know. I'm just trying to always like phase these things out for a lot of the work with all the pieces we're going through. But really at this point, it is continued software testing. We got to figure out now, we need to start figuring out the 10.10, how that may be incorporated and when. Obviously, we're continuing to work within 10.09, that 2020 R3 release. We're looking for soft rollouts wherever appropriate. I mean, we are looking to use ORD, and we are on a number of projects, but where it makes sense. And then it's all about documentation and training. We're trying to figure out how to pass along the information we have and how to train our folks and get training for our PEFs as well. And then I really see this fall, winter, and into the 2022 to really kind of, I'll call it phase 2 or 3, but really have all these units, divisions, private engineering firms really prepared to begin these new projects using ORD. Certainly from a base mapping side, our location surveys, our photogrammetry units, they are ready. We're trying to get all other disciplines as far as their workspaces, their workflows ready to go. So we are not requiring it at this point, but we are heavily suggesting that everyone move towards ORD as rapidly as you can. If I fast forward to July of next year, that summer of 2022, we should be at a point then where we have a number of true pilot projects under our belts. All our disciplines and units are very adept at using the software. We've gone to 10.10 where it makes sense, and we have the workspaces up and running, our managed project-wise space operational, and we are truly moving forward even more of an implementation. But for the short term, again, we are still using SS2, SS4 for now, and we're trying to figure out that side-by-side approach, which is whatever the best use of our taxpayer dollars are. So we do have that going as well. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm excited about a phase 3 where sometime in the next year or two, I really want to figure out how we start doing that first piloting of a model delivery for construction, where we truly let the model rather than the traditional plan set for construction. And I'm fully prepared, and we're certainly aware that for a lot of our initial model deliveries, certainly we'll have side-by-side plans that come with it, but we're really looking to see what that would look like from just a pure model delivery for construction. So looking to that as well. As I mentioned, a number of test and pilot projects are currently underway. varies depending on different divisions and units, but we have approximately about 20 or so test projects going on. And what I mean by test projects is these are projects that typically have already been designed, some have already been built, but we're going back using ORD to see if we can replicate that design work using ORD rather than the MicroStation V8i, the SS2, SS4 software. And so there's a lot of disciplines units practicing that way. But then in addition, we do have a true number of true pilot projects, and it's more than 5 now, but it's somewhere in that 5 to 10 range where we're currently using ORD with some of our PEFs to really generate the plans that we will let for construction. So we're very excited about that. And as I mentioned on the testing side, we're still obviously figuring out and using 10.09, but as I noted, Bentley has released 10.10, and we're starting to figure that out as well, but that will be a process this fall for sure. Those test projects, I just put a few screenshots up here, but really the focus of those test projects is obviously for each of the divisions and the units to really figure out their specific workflows. But we are starting to see a lot of design pieces where you're seeing some of the clash detection, whether it's from some of these high mast light poles to see where you see it in the design rather than like in a two-dimensional, what it would look like in 3D. And so we're starting to have some good tangible understanding of the software, and that's side by side with the two-dimensional views and three-dimensional views as far as the design. As I mentioned, as far as the firms out there, as far as soft rollout opportunities, my biggest note is this bottom one here, is that we are closely working with all the project managers across the state, whether that's in our central project management unit, out in the divisions, within structures. But if you have a design work that's early on in the phase and you're considering using ORD, that is an option for our project managers, and we're trying to figure out the best use of that, because ultimately, obviously, we're going to do all projects in ORD, but in this middle ground, which ones do we convert? Which ones do we stay the course with SS2, SS4? And we are really trying to look at that on a project by project basis, what makes best sense for the department. Training, and this one actually we are starting to bring back some classroom sessions, which is a nice thing, like I said, but looking to find the best ways to provide training options. And a lot of the units and divisions that we'll be discussing and presenting this week will talk about some of their work around specific training they're doing for their disciplines. But really, I would just heavily suggest that you look into any training options you can around ORD, because the department is certainly moving that direction still. There is all the plans in the world to stay with ORD and move off of SS2, SS4 as we move forward. With that said, obviously the external training, I would encourage the PEFs to look at a number of Bentley Learn sites. You can always reach out. We're trying to start posting different ones we feel that are available. In addition to, we're looking for different roadway training modules, and other units are preparing theirs as we speak to basically figure out the best way we are encouraging our PEFs to use ORD. So certainly keep your eye open for a lot of that training options as we move forward. And then to round out a few things, I just put this slide up here just to say, look, as far as the readiness and the enhancement needs, as I mentioned, we're testing it, we're working within it, but there's a lot of development as we go type work. And so we meet with Bentley on a regular basis, as well as a number of state DOTs across the nation. And it's certainly a common software practice where you get it to a certain point, you have the users in the field, which is the DOT agencies, use the civil design software, and you cater it to the specific needs from there. And so we continue to find areas where enhancements are needed. Maybe they're pure fixes or bugs. Most of the time it's preference. And so we're trying to figure out the best ways around that. Should we learn to use it more of an out-of-the-box type solution with the Bentley software? Or is it truly important to how NCDOT operates to try to customize it a little bit? We're certainly trying to err towards the out-of-the-box type processes with Bentley, but really looking at those still and trying to figure out within each unit what that means. But we are trying to move towards that out-of-the-box, Bentley provided software solution on how to do our design work. So we're getting there, but it is taking a lot of work and a lot of time still. And with each release comes another cycle of this. So with 10.10 coming out, we've got some things to figure out again. So we're hopeful it's going to fix a number of things, and then we'll see how that affects our workflow in other areas as well. As far as I mentioned the workflow changes, we are really trying to understand this on a weekly basis. We are going through some of our testing and pilot projects, and that's the core of what we're trying to figure out. Should we change our workflow processes? How do we bend within it? How can we be more efficient? The department's really trying to be very open-minded around how we adopt to the new three-dimensional modeling and how this can really change our policies. And so that's a lot of work. I mean, that brings around certain standards, policy changes as we figure this out. So that's all forthcoming as well. So we're all collectively working to figure out how this is going to be this big paradigm shift. And this will be in the works for years here. So we'll continue that process. And then, as I noted, some of the biggest impacts are when to convert, because as we all know, the majority of all our NCDOT projects have been around for a while. They get started, there's a feasibility, there's early preliminary design. It may be quote unquote put on the shelf for reasons, whether that's funding or other environmental type assessment work that needs to be done. But long story short, the majority of our projects have already been started with design work in SS2, SS4. So then the big question is, at which projects, at which point do you convert over, use ORD to finish them up, or do you stay the course and finish them up using SS2, SS4? And again, this is one of the bigger questions that we're working with our project managers on, what that looks like over the next year or two or beyond, and how long we continue to use the licensing for SS2, SS4 in the interim. And then what truly needs to be done as far as a conversion, as far as that goes. And so we've been working very diligently to try to figure that out where we're at now and adopt that as we move forward. So in saying that, we've come up with conversion guidelines. I won't go into too much detail on this, but this is just a draft of trying to understand in the process when we would convert, when we wouldn't. And again, it's still on a project by project basis. There's so many factors to consider. And then even as we do look into conversions, would it be a full-on conversion? Are we just talking like a minimal, depending on where it's at in the design phase? What that truly means. And to just elaborate a little bit more on that, it's all about the project complexity. I mean, obviously some of these where we are far enough along, if we're well past the hydro stage and we're in like the more of the traditional 60-90% phase where we're basically done, we're going to most likely finishing up in SS2, SS4 at this point, especially around the scheduling, if the let date is coming up in the next year or two. But some of these, like I said, again, with let dates out in 2024, 2025, 2026, what is the right course and when should you convert? And really from an ideal standpoint for the department, we are trying to have as minimal impact on project schedule, project budget. We're not looking to go backwards, we're looking to move forward. And so how does all that get incorporated? I know that other states, I think Virginia and others, they're identifying some of these projects and they're just going to have a twofold path. And you know what I'm saying? There's going to be some that just stay the course with SS2, SS4, and then the ones that move forward with ORD. For our department, NCDOT, it is our intention that any new project work or any new design work that comes out that is very, very early on in the conceptual preliminary design stage, we want to use ORD because that's where we're headed. And so that's where a lot of our divisions and units are getting ready for this and are prepared. But the challenging piece comes around the ones that are in mid-flow, some that come off the shelf or that are basically halfway done. We're at different phases. Where do you go back? Do you convert over, finish them to ORD? What does that really mean from a technical standpoint? And that's what we're truly trying to understand. Because again, we do not want to affect project schedule or budget if at all possible. So trying to use the best use of taxpayer dollars for getting a project done and cutting a ribbon for an open new set of road or bridges that are have been constructed rather than spending more on the design pieces. So that's really our focus as a department. So all that said, I'll just touch on workspaces for a minute, but really at our noon session today with our CAD services folks, they'll go into much more detail about this. But from just a pure logistic standpoint, we will be maintaining a V8i SS2, SS4 workspace for the foreseeable future while we make this transition. And then obviously we'll have a Connect ORD workspace as well that I know we've been testing and working on for a while now, but we're looking to really formalize and finalize what that workspace is for each of the units, how it's to be utilized by our private engineering firms, where you get it, all those type things. What do we use for testing and training versus production? So more to come around that about noon today is for the rest of the day. So to wrap up and really start off an open dialogue here, I really appreciate everyone's time this morning. This is very exciting for me as an engineer. I have a pretty unique background as far as software and engineering and business. And so for those three tied together, ORD makes all the sense in the world. We've got to get to that modern design platform where it's not quite like Iron Man and Tony Stark, where you're just kind of like moving things on a screen and boom, there's your project and you're ready to go. But the more efficient we can get towards that, the better. And that'll have all sorts of positive impact from a business side, and certainly from a civil design side. So we're getting there. I say all that. I know we work a lot internally at the department. As I mentioned, our internal working group members, as we actively work through this. But as I express to everyone all the time, we've got to figure out that multi-pronged approach, that multiple ways to work with the industry, because obviously at this point, the private engineering firms and industry we work with do the bulk of all the design work for the department. And so we need to really work hand in hand to make sure that we're all growing and collaboratively figuring this out together. So I think this website is posted a number of places, but the website here for external coordination, keep it up to date, let you know where the department is. You can always reach out with questions to myself, or we've got other email addresses out there. Really looking for input, insight, as we all collaboratively figure out how to best serve the citizens of North Carolina. This is a great state. We have a lot of wonderful people in this state that we're really responsible for maintaining the safety of their transportation and our roads, our bridges. So it's a collective effort. So I'm very appreciative of everyone's focus on this as we make this big shift for the state. So I say all that. I've got two folks specifically on my panel for today, and at the end of each question period in the sessions we have this week, I will most likely be in every session, as well as Ethan Schwartz, who again is our Bentley ORD expert advisor, and Vaseem, who's our roadway design unit person that's helping me out. He came on board and he's been such a fantastic addition to the team. But as far as figuring out ORD, how it can work throughout the department, these are two of my go-to persons every week. So they're on board as well to help answer some questions. And as I noted, when we go through some of these questions, if you do think of something after the session or at any point, we do have an ORD implementation initiative email address. It's the one right there in the middle of the screen. But again, you can also reach out directly to me as well. I'm trying to coordinate this and facilitate all the brain power across this department and the state, and certainly utilize all our folks across the industry as well. So with all that said, that concludes my presentation, and I do want to spend the last 10 or 15 minutes. If there are any questions, any discussion points to bring up, I would welcome the conversation, because I'm not so worried about what's on our radar, because we're working towards those. We're rapidly trying to figure things out, fix things, figure out how to do them. What I'm most concerned about is, what am I missing? Who have we not touched? Where's there a gap? Where's there a blind spot that we need to make sure is aware of things, that is working towards this transition? So I'm all the time trying to ask folks, what am I missing as we go through this process? Because it's a lot. But with that said, Brian, I'll turn it back over to you, and thank you so much for the opportunity to present today.
Oh, thank you, Jeff. Thank you for a great presentation.
Mm-hmm.
As Jeff mentioned, we like to have some questions. You can put them in the chat box or raise your hand, because I know he's wanting some input on. But I know that was a lot to digest on a Monday morning. So
That's true.
And RD and just in general is a lot to digest. I mean, your whole presentation is spot on. It's a monumental paradigm shift. I mean, I've been in it 35 years, and my first 10 years was doing board drafting too,
Mm-hmm.
roadway and structures. So I'm definitely aware of the changes that's going on right now and how to implement it and how to train. And, change is not easy. Change is never easy. So that's the big thing we had to figure out. So put your comments or questions in the chat box. One of them was, I do have one question. For functional plans, is NCDOT going to require a Bentley concept station, or is that just going to be a tool, or is that going to be a requirement for doing preliminary functional type work?
That's an excellent question. As far as the requirement piece, I'll have to look into that, but I know we are using Concept Station. We are trying to figure out the best use of it as it flows with ORD. Obviously, we've had it in the past, trying to understand the best use of it within our current workflow and how we're moving forward. But yeah, Concept Station is still certainly in our mix right now and trying to figure out the best use of that. So that's the general answer. But Vaseem and or Ethan on the line and stuff, if you have other information to chime in on that, feel free.
Yeah, so we have looked into Concept Station and done testing, previously, trying to figure out if that would be the best product. And obviously, for a functional plan stage, that seems like a, perfect product. But, from NCDOT workflow, estimate development and sort of like, the smooth transition from a functional plan or a feasibility plan to a 25% phase. Overall, ORD seems a better product. Just so it's from our NCDOT standpoint, it's just easier with the workspace and workflow. So I think it's better to have that functional plans in ORD rather than Concept Station, because internally it's hard to kind of maintain two software together right now.
Yeah, true. I don't know if everyone's aware of not, and Bentley may chime in if they want to, but the new 10.10, the new 2021 software, it is a side-by-side installation. So if anybody's, I don't know if anybody's aware of that or it's not been published, but if you look at the installation README, it is a side-by-side installation. So you still can keep your old R3 version on your machine and also install the new version for testing. I haven't done that myself yet, so I don't know if there's any issues. But so far, I haven't heard of any issues. But this is the first time it will be a side-by-side install. So make everyone aware of that.
Yeah, and that is correct, Brian. That's one of the new feature functions that Bentley is certainly very proud of, that they're advertising for that, and their plan is to keep that in each one moving forward, so that you always have the ability to, I think it'll be back as much as like 3. I'm not sure exactly what they're, but yeah, so we're going to start looking at that too. Yeah. Yes,
because I knew that was a major concern. If you start a project and say R3, you want to finish it in R3. You don't necessarily want to upgrade everything. You'll be able to do that now, or as the version goes along. I'm sure it's going to continue that for any major. I understand it's any major upgrades, not just the bug fixes and things of that nature that you get. So that'll be automatically updated. But any what they call new releases will be side-by-side installs. Yeah, I'm sure you will do that, but I'm sure they're just asking if step-by-step guide on how to install ORD. I'm sure that's some of the documentation that you're working on, but that was one of the questions that was brought up. I'll let you answer that, but I know you guys are working on not only installation and not only training, but a lot of manuals and a lot of things of that nature.
My immediate response is, like I said, you should join at noon as well with the CAD services folks and put that squarely in front of them, because they're.
That's very good point. Very good point.
No, I know we are working on that exact documentation, trying to help everyone understand really the best paths and processes to utilize ORD, our workspaces, how to download it, how to really get it configured in the best way that we're wanting it to be done, so that we can all work in the same type vein. So, but yeah, the CAD services and the noon presentation, they will be much more adept at answering those type questions.
That's true, and everywhere this is a full week, so everyone definitely sign up for all presentations you're able to attend, or anyone you're really interested in. Also, if you come up with any suggestions or any topics, any training, anything you want to bring up, just write those down, and you can bring them up in any of the presentations. There'll be a lot of folks online, so just keep that in mind too. That's and for NCLUG, we're going to continue to partner with NCDOT. Jeff brought up about the training. It's a monumental task to get that out there. COVID has definitely stalled NCLUG and NCDOT from doing in-person training. Hopefully, keeping our fingers crossed that's going to get better in the next 6 months to a year. We're going to be able to do either training with NCDOT or with Bentley or together. That is not gone away. But we've really been proud and really been excited about our webinars and our tech talks. But we know everyone likes to get together and collaborate and talk to each other and sort of have an in-person training. So we'll definitely have not put that. We haven't put that aside for a while, but we're definitely looking to implement that again, so that when that's probably up to Bentley or this timing. There's a lot that goes into that, but that is on our plate. Mm-hmm. And that kind of fits into the time frame that Jeff was talking about the end of the year and first next year, really getting into ORD implementation for NCDOT, and we'll try to time that as well. Mm-hmm. Any more questions? Now's a good time to ask anyone. But if you don't, like I say, be sure to think about something later. Be sure to write it down and bring it up in a future presentation. I'll hold it to Friday. So we're all going to have an overall overview on Friday. Anything else? This is your one last chance to ask Jeff a question.
Oh, it's not the last chance. You got me all week. I'll be here all week with all the sessions.
Yeah, we're here all week. So, but yes, all sessions will be posted to the NCLUG website. We'll send those links out, but be sure to check the websites. I know a lot of people probably can't attend all the sessions, so I'm sure there's a big interest in going back and reviewing these later. They will all be up there. I know there's a lot of interest, but I know there's a lot of projects, a lot of time constraints. So we'll definitely get those recordings up there as soon as we can. Okay, with that, we'll thank Jeff again for a great presentation, and be sure to attend all week, and be sure to go to NCLUG, go under the events and register for all the sessions you would like to attend. And we'll get together again at noon and go over that great presentation. I thank Jeff again, and everybody have a great morning, great day, and we'll talk to you later.
Sounds great. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, everyone. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Jeff. Bye.
Yep. Thanks all.